And so this brings us to, I think, the one question everybody wants to know. Who is the infamous they, the puppet masters behind the strings, puppeting the governments of the world? Who are they, and what are their power structures? So you can't get into that subject without understanding Carroll Quigley.
For anyone unfamiliar with the historical significance of the highly influential author and professor Carroll Quigley, he was brought to the forefront of public consciousness when former student, Rhodes Scholar and President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton,
he had a very famous student by the name of William Clinton,
publicly recognized him in his speech to the Democratic National Convention in 1992.
I heard that call clarified by a professor named Carroll Quigley, who said to us that America was the greatest nation in history.
So Carroll Quigley was a professor of Western civilization and history. He did his undergraduate work at Harvard. He received a doctorate in 1938. He later taught at Princeton, Harvard, and Georgetown's School of Foreign Service.
He was a frequent lecturer in the U.S. Naval Weapons Laboratory, the Foreign Service Institute, and the Naval College in Virginia. In 1958, he served as a consultant to the Congressional Select Committee, which set up NASA.
Now, why is this significant? It's significant because Professor Quigley taught the conspiratorial view of history as explained by the conspirators themselves. Quigley was very close to a secret society. In fact, he had been invited, he said in his own works, he had been invited into its inner circle and given the privilege of examining the society's private papers.
Two must-read books on this subject. One of them is Tragedy and Hope. The other one's The Anglo-American Establishment.
These books were not written for mass consumption. They were written primarily for academia and for people who were involved in this conspiracy at one level or another, who were curious to know about its origins, about its history, and about the extent of its operations in the world today.
Quigley was always known as the official historian of what he calls the network.
And he admired it. He thought it was wonderful. He felt privileged to be close to it and to its documents. And he said the only point of disagreement that he had with this secret organization was that it wished to remain hidden from view.
Or the society, or what Griffin later calls the Rhodes Group.
Quigley directly detailed the network's need to control a country's monetary system through the establishment of privately controlled central banks in order to dominate the governments of nation-states. And he illustrates a good example of how a small group of people can secretly create an institute to meet their needs. He went on to explain the obvious necessity of a core commonality of the two main parties in the left-right political paradigm, giving the electorate the illusion of meaningful choice.
Mr. Curtis, are there programs that can be used to secretly fix elections?
Yes.
How do you know that to be the case?
Because in October of 2000, I wrote a prototype for President Congressman Tom Feeney at the company I work for in Oviedo, Florida, that did just that.
That means, therefore, that when President Clinton gave homage to Professor Quigley, to those who knew who Quigley was and what his position was and what he wrote about and what he advocated, Clinton was saying he knew about this conspiracy and he was now in its service. That was a signal to everyone around the world who understood what the real meaning was.
He details the what becomes later known as the society that was formed in the 19th century based on the final will and testament of Cecil Rhodes. This naturally begs the question, well, who is Cecil Rhodes? So Cecil Rhodes was one of the wealthiest men of all human history. He owned all the diamond and gold deposits in South Africa, all of these mineral reserves. In just a short period of time, he amasses a huge fortune, maybe one of the greatest fortunes the world has ever known. When Rhodes died, none of his money went to his heirs, instead it went through a series of 7 wills to establish the creation of a secret society.
This secret society exists today, continues to exist, and has been a major historical force since World War I.
Rhodes was more than a founder of a dynasty. He aspired to be the creator of one of those vast, semi-religious, quasi-political associations which, like the Society of Jesus, has played so large a part in the history of the world. To be more strictly accurate, he wished to found an order as the instrument of the will of the dynasty.
Quigley says that every major event in history, from World War I, has been dominated and directed to a large extent by this secret society.
In the book Tragedy and Hope, Quigley notes that, Rhodes's fortune was dedicated to, quote, nothing less than to create a system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political systems of each country and the economy of the world as a whole.
It was from that the Council on Foreign Relations sprang in this country. There were similar organizations in other British dependencies. And they all had as their goal the creation of a unified world government based on the model of collectivism.
In the Anglo-American establishment, Carroll Quigley notes that, this organization has been able to conceal its existence quite successfully, and many of its most influential members, satisfied to possess the reality rather than the appearance of power, are unknown, even to close students of British history.
Partly because of the deliberate policy of secrecy which this group has adopted, and partly because the group itself is not closely integrated, but rather appears as a series of overlapping circles or rings, partly concealed by being hidden behind formally organized groups of no obvious political significance.
The purpose of the society was to create a structure that would literally control the world from behind the scenes in a fashion that the average man or woman would never even see coming or never even know that it existed. Michael Howard, in his book Lessons of History, page 66, quotes Rhodes as saying, "Why are you doing all this, Rhodes?" The quote goes, "To and for the establishment, promotion, and development of a secret society